So, hi there again. I'm Diane Callahan, developmental editor and YouTuber quotidian writer. I'm here with Jordan Riley Swan, so the author of The Heart's Bidding, which is a family drama and with a healthy side of sweet romance there. And it was a novel inspired by his former job as an antiques seller, right? How would you describe your former job?
Well, I owned an antique shop, and it sold mainly furniture and with knickknacks and whatnot. I'd buy them at auction, clean them up, research them. Some stuff would go online for sale, and then we had an actual physical location, just like Kay does, where we would sell couches and little glass puppy dogs and what have you.
Yeah,
Right, that was before the ravages of our particular pandemic that we're suffering through, but.
yeah. So
Mm.
it's really tough for in-person stores, but I mean, I guess at any time, because even in the book, like, so she runs the Vintage at Heart, which is her family antique shop, but then, she has to go to auctioning school in order to keep it running. But so even in better days, I feel like antique shops are pretty hard to keep afloat in general, right?
Yeah, there is. It's a very specific niche market, and I sort of stumbled into it because I wanted to be a writer, which is an interesting roundabout way to do it. So if we catapult back in time, way, 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 way back, so many years, we're not going to mention it. Uh, I was working on some of my very first novels. I couldn't have been more than 25, 26 years old. And my typing speed was atrocious. I mean, hunt and peck kind of typing. So, but my mom's typing speed was blazing fast. And I thought, well, what I'll do is I will record these into micro cassettes as I walk around the neighborhood, and it keeps me away from the keyboard. And then my mom can transcribe them. Now, this was 20 years ago. So this was when it was literally the little tiny cassette tapes before the digital era of things getting converted and what have you. So I walk around the neighborhood, dictating into a little micro cassette thing, pass the tapes off to her. And then I happened to stop by one evening to see what kind of progress, because it was taking her a long time to do these. And I thought, it doesn't make sense because her typing speed's hilarious and just blasting fast. Well, I couldn't afford at the time a brand new transcription machine, which there's these they sit on the secretary's desk, and you put the tape in, and then there's like a foot pedal like you'd see for a sewing machine, and if you press the pedal one way, it goes fast and rewind, so you could keep your hands free. Unfortunately, I could only afford a second microcassette recorder, so it was a little handheld unit, probably no bigger than this. So what my mom would have to do is she would listen to it, stop it, put it down, tippity tappity tip,
Mm.
maybe rewind it a bit to hear what I was saying because a car went by. So it ended up being slower. And I thought, well, if we're going to keep doing this, and I really want to keep doing this, I need to buy her one of these transcription machines. But at the time, they were $350, and I was trying to write full time, so every penny counted. And one of my friends said, "Hey, have you ever buy anything off eBay?" And I said, "E what?" And he says, "Great account, get one. If you don't care what condition it is, buy it, and it's used, but it'll function, and you'll get it for like one third to one quarter of what the one new was." So I did it, bought it. It came to me, and I'm like, "Man, that was super easy, super super easy. I bet I could do this. I bet I could sell stuff." So after about a week of researching things, trying to find something I could sell and just have drop shipped, I realized everybody's already doing that. There's no point in me. And my mom mentioned, well, what about going to auctions? Your grandma Edith and I used to go to auctions every weekend during the summer. Maybe you could do that, buy some stuff at auction and resell it. So I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. I've got a little bit of money saved up, read a $50 bill. And well, I'll go to the auction with my $50 bill, and I'll see what happens. Uh, I, I still have a picture somewhere on some of the $50 bill I started with. So I went to the auction. My mom, as a birthday present, bought me a digital camera. And this is when digital cameras, even the most rinky dink one, was pretty expensive. She bought the camera, and I went to the auctions, bought some box lots, sold some of it online for maybe $60, $70, bought some more box lots at the next auction, sold it for maybe 150, 200, and slowly over time built up this business. But it also became a job that wasn't, the job was supposed to be so that I could work at 15, 20 hours and then spend the other 30, 40 hours that you would normally be working writing. But it sort of took over my life. 10 hours became 20, 20 became 40, 40 became all 10 hours a day. And then it was, I've got too much stuff now. I have to sell to the flea market. But then a flea market became a little tiny space in antique mall. One space became 14, and 14 spaces became an entire business. And 15 years have passed, and I hadn't written a word. I'm in my at this point, I'm in my late 30s going into my 40s. And I'm like, what was the point? I've got two shops at this point. I've got 6, 7 employees working underneath me. I'm living life and I'm doing well in the American sense of idea, but I'm not writing. So I think it was about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago at this point. I'm like, that's enough. I'm going to write something, even if I have to scale back on the business a little bit. So I started tickling the keyboard a little bit, realized I have no idea what I'm doing. So I started watching YouTube videos to figure out, well, where am I going wrong? And I stumbled upon this really highly well produced series of videos. I'm off track now. I'm over here in the weeds talking about something completely different.
That's good.
So I watched some Brandon Sanderson videos on writing. I watched a few others, and then I fell into your videos, which were probably some of the most helpful for me because they would tackle one topic at a time, and they were really well produced. I reached out to you to help me develop a novel, and we've been working together for about a year and a half now. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's how the business started to help me write, but then never let me write. However, it performed well enough for so long that I can now write full time, even though we're in the middle of a horrific pandemic. And I did end up, unfortunately, I did end up having to shut my shops down at the beginning of the pandemic because I wouldn't risk. Most of my employees were in the 60 years old and 70. I mean, my mom worked for me at the time. I wasn't going to risk her health out there.
Mm-hmm.
So when you helped me shepherd in the Heart's Bidding, and then we've also done some other books
Yeah.
since then.
We have, and I think the very interesting thing about like working in the auctioning world for so long is it's just something that people don't really have like an intimate knowledge of. Like I don't know anybody that's like super deep into auctions, and there's something very romantic about the idea of auctions in general, like the idea of like collecting vintage things or like going to auctions to hear people do bid calling and things like that. So
I think not to interrupt, but I think we have the Hollywood version of it where there is some spy thriller where they're trying to buy something and everybody's James Bond with their paddles in the air. I'm going to win this and stop the bad guy. Or but a farm auction or a household auction is a completely different monster. Or they may see like a vintage auction in some 1890s movie of where they're buying tobacco by the barrel. That stuff does happen, but it's the daily grind auction where grandma passed away and who's going to buy all their knickknacks? You can't just sell it in the front yard. I mean, you can, but the auction becomes the place to take care of that in a large way and all at once where, okay, everything's gone by the end of the day. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, I think it's just something that I think is a bigger part of our world than we realize, like with estate sales and that sort of thing. Because yeah, we have all this stuff. Like, what do we do with it after we're kind of done using it and things like that? And it's got to go somewhere. And there's a lot of value in antiques, like not just like sentimental and like financial value, but just like cultural value in it almost. So I have a set of nightstands that you gave me that are like real wood, so that's pretty hard to find these days.
Yeah, everything's pressed board and we don't have enough time. What is the 10-hour limit on the YouTube? I don't know, but we could go for a while me complaining about how things are today. I'd sound like a crotchety old bastard. What things are today versus what they were. One of my big selling pitches when I was on the floor, someone would walk up and they'd look at a dated piece of furniture like, this really looks kind of 70s. And I'm like, well, it's already survived 50 years. This thing is sitting here 50 years later. Guess what? You buy this, send it off to your kids to college. It's going to survive college. It's going to survive another 50 years and you're going to hand it down to somebody else as opposed to going to IKEA and see the bookcase bow after about 3 months of your heavy book sitting on it. There is something about craftsmanship back in the day that just doesn't, unless you specifically search it out, you just don't get it, because they don't make money selling you one nightstand. They make money selling you 3 or 4 nightstands over 10 years as these ones get ruined.
Exactly. And I think, yeah, it's just interesting to think about that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
and there's uh, green cycling. The fact that we're not producing more waste doing so. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons to actually like auctions. Now, there's all kinds of reasons to not like auctions as well. I've seen fights. You get you get in competition. It does have a competitive edge to it, and it can bring out the worst in people as they get mad and uh, get emotionally involved. There's a thing called bitter fever, and I have seen it happen. Real life seen it happen. I put an anecdote in the book, actually, of there was 2 sisters at an auction who hated each other with a passion I would reserve for somebody who killed a family member. That's the level of hate. And this little Bible comes up for bid, and it was probably a 1960s Bible, leather bound with a little zipper along the side of it. It's the kind of thing that would have been normally thrown into a box lot at an auction, but it was the point of contention between these sisters. And the reason the will, which, excuse me, there was no will, the reason the fight had happened, that everything was auctioned, they had fought so bitterly over this particular Bible that the entire their mother's belongings was forced to go to auction by the judge. And they had to bid against each other for this thing. And this Bible, I think I even went a lower price in the book because I didn't want people to not believe that this $2 Bible sold for $5,000, because these 2 sisters are looking at everything is selling, knowing that the court is going to split the money between them. So they're only paying half that value, but they still, one of them sisters was willing to give up $2,500 worth of the monies of the sale for that Bible. And the amount of F words that were spat back and forth between the ladies would have been like, why are you doing this over a Bible? The irony was thick.
oh, it's so awful. And
It
now I
was
kind of wish that had been like a bigger scene in it. Because yeah, I do remember that moment in here. And I know that some of them, like a lot of the scenes in it are kind of inspired by your experiences. Like there's an actual yellow door. Like at the beginning, Kay bids too much for a yellow door because she's like distracted by the guy's voice. But you
well
actually,
that
you still have it,
I
or
still have the yellow door. I will, if I'd been thinking about it, I would have put it over here, but I don't want to disturb my unicorn. She doesn't want to go anywhere.
she's
Um,
sensitive.
well, what happened was hearts bidding occurred because I had developed a series concept that I wanted to sort of be my Marvel MCU of romance. I had a hero and heroine are doing a specific thing, and their story would have interarched through about a dozen other people's stories. But then I wanted little spin-offs. And I wrote the first of this massive series I was going to do. And then I'm like, I need to take a break, but I want to tell stories connected to that series. So I decided, well, I'll make one of an auction story. Now at this point, I thought I was going to be self-publishing everything that I did. And I thought I was going to have to create the covers. I didn't understand that you could get people to create covers for you. Well, I did, but I'm like, I don't want to spend money on that. So I was in my warehouse and I had just unloaded the truck. And there's this big yellow door that I had purchased, because one of the things that can happen is you'll buy architectural pieces from houses and things, sconces and windows that have multiple panes in it, because there are recyclers who love doing stuff with it. One of the tricks at the time was people would take old doors and turn them into headboards of beds.
Mhm.
So I thought, okay, this will make a nice twin size bed. It's yellow, it's got real chippy paint on it. It had a very good textural look to it. So I thought, what would be great is if I buy that and it's, book shaped because it's tall, and I could make that the cover of this novel, when I thought I was going to be taking care of making the cover of it. And then I kept it. And when I went to send it, when we started working with Bookfly Cover Design, who does all our
Mhm.
covers for
Yeah,
Story Garden.
they're beautiful.
Yes, fantastic. He's fantastic. Um, I sent him pictures of it. I said, can you put this in the cover? I've saved this for a year now that I've been working on this book. And he's like, no. And then proceeded to make, I'm sure he said something nice at the same time, but he's basically just, no, it's, you're, it will look horrible, is what it all came down to. And he was absolutely right. The moment I saw our book in the lineup of other people's books on Amazon, that blue popped and the yellow would have just disappeared into the ether. So he was absolutely positively right with that. But as a way to let me know that all doors don't lead to the same place, I've kept the door.
It's really cool. And I was wondering too, with like just hearing you talk about all this auction stuff, and like we haven't used too much jargon in talking about it, but like in the book there is a little bit of jargon as far as like bid calling, like like the
Cadence.
515 and stuff like that. Like that's I find that really interesting to learn about like this kind of niche world of like this the whole culture and like vocabulary of it. And so
Right.
like, did you find that difficult to make it for like so like a lay person could understand what's going on?
Well, the good news is when you hire a proper editor, like quotidian writer Diane Callahan, uh, just out of curiosity, will they see both of us at the same time in these
They
videos?
should, yeah, they should. And it's gonna be that like side by side like black
Okay.
space thing. So
Okay. Okay. Hello, YouTube. We're talking about you, and you're not even here.
we see
Uh,
you.
okay. Well, okay. So get an editor who doesn't know anything. You want beta readers who know the world
Mhm.
because they're going to say, "Hey, you can't. This doesn't work this way." But your editor doesn't. And if your
Mhm.
editor doesn't know the world you're writing about, you're going to find out that you didn't write it properly. Because if they're confused and they're deep into the book, then, oh man, there's a problem. So a lot of it is intuitive because even though we've only seen the Hollywood version of auctions, we understand that the number goes higher, and then the person who's paddles in the air at the end, that there's such a thing called cadence. Now, some of the more sophisticated stuff, like the filler words, which is to anybody who's not going to read the book but wants to know, filler words are that little beat kind of thing that's between numbers while they're saying, so 4, bit of 5, bit of 6, bit of 7, bit of 8, bit of 9, bit of 9, bit of 9. That bit apart, that the arcing thing that went between the numbers, that is called filler words. So I didn't even know that. What I had to do was when I was writing it, I'm like, well, I need to know what that is. Well, I just asked one of the auctioneers. I'm like, what is the thing called where you guys are like, now, just because I did that bid calling right there does not mean I know how to bid call. Because, like Kay, I am terrified of public speaking, and would never, even though multiple people are like, "Why don't you come and auction? Why don't you come? You're so close to the thing. You know all this stuff about it." Because I would have to stand in front of people and
Yeah,
talk, and I'm not going to do that.
that would be painful. But
Did that answer your question?
that did. That's so cool. And I also love that XC Sands, the audiobook narrator, that she like literally kind of watched YouTube videos on how to bid call and like so she does it in the narration. Like that's totally extra effort in there.
Yes, it was absolutely. She was a godsend for us
Oh
to
my God.
uh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Get yourself a good narrator. If you're gonna get an audiobook done, get a narrator who it isn't just okay, I need to do this and be done. Find one who cares about the project because you're gonna get that extra little something out of it.
For sure. And yeah, and my last question slash comment is about this, which
Cool.
is a thing I have owned for like 10 years. I just got it at some antique shop because like where I grew up, there's just a bunch of them. And then so I just got it because it looked cool and I like to put stuff on my shelf. And so like I've just had this forever. And then I was like, well, I want to take a little Instagram picture. And I'm like, I just happen to have this, Mark. I have no idea who would want a gavel made of glass. And then Mark goes and tells me like, oh, actually, like you want to tell us what this is?
That's an Avon bottle, probably from the late '60s, early '70s.
Yeah.
Well, the date I don't know. I didn't never concentrated on Avon because my mom's allergic to scent, so we never dealt with it. But I've seen dozens of them. Avon would do a thing where they would, to help sell their scent, they would put a gimmick with it. So what you're seeing with the glass head there is where the perfume would have
Yeah.
physically been in, or the cologne would have been physically in it. So there would be racing cars. There would be all kinds of masculine things and things that have to do with businesses to try to upsell. And they would be gifts where a woman who sells Avon is like, oh, Judge Henry is married to my best friend. So are you sniffing it?
It smells like it still. I've never, because
Oh,
I never took off the head until he said that. And then when I did that, it has that little stopper that you see in cologne bottles too. It smells like the whatever cologne. It has a nice little spicy undertones. Nice cologne.
nice little spicy. It's
Um,
spicy.
but
So
it's
yeah,
good
there
marketing
is a
strategy.
there. I'm anybody who's ever uh, anybody's ever played a role-playing game knows what I'm about to say. I'm like the bard of antiques. I have a little bit of knowledge about a lot of stuff, but no deep knowledge about anything else. So I could recognize stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I could tell you almost everything back here. I could tell you a little bit about everything. My little props. For those who are going to ask, and I know people are going to ask if we get any views, do I do I write on that? And the answer is, are you absolutely BS crazy? No, I don't write on that. I tried. Oh my God, I tried. It fully works. It's from 19, it's 100 plus years old at this point, 1915 or something like that. And it had fresh enough ink in the cartridge that it is, if you were to come over, you could actually see something I've written on it because it does totally work. But oh, the angle that you have to type oh, and
Yeah,
then
I see it is very
the
slanted.
amount of
Oh,
that
you have
you
to hear
have to
that.
you have to hit them. You can't just. So I know a little bit about a lot of things, you know. So yeah, this is my YouTube backdrop, but it's also I write on the other side of where I'm at right now. So this is what I see while I write. And being an antiques dealer, I was able to over years collect things like helmets that are, you know, kind of like a guy's look for a guy. But then there are certain things here that were stuff from my shop when it was for sale that I had to shut the shop down. So I just put a lot of the storage, like my desk here, the lamp. These are things that would have, if you came into my shop 2 years ago, you would have seen. Now, was my shop look like this? No, these are the best of the best of the best in my shop. Where I live, my bread and butter, where I lived was in the $99 dresser, where I'd pick it up for $15, $20 at an auction somewhere. We'd clean it up, do some light repairs on it, sell it for $99, knowing it's going to go into some little kid's room where they can beat the heck out of it. And mom didn't pay $250 for something that they're going to outgrow in 3 years.
Makes sense. And yeah, but sometime we'll have to do like a tour of your writing space so we can see all your antiques and whatnot. Because yeah, you have some cool stuff like a sword collection and just like utterly ridiculous
Well,
art pieces.
when we do the urban fantasy book that's coming down the line, I won't spoil anything right now unless you go to our website, and there's all kinds of stuff on the website about it. When we do anything fantasy related, my backdrop will change to, because I did collect swords over the years. You know, you're at an auction and it's, you know, $20 here, $50 there. These sometimes some of my swords are those cheap made in China. They're sword-like objects. They look like a sword, but they're not really. All the way up to things that would have been actually 200-300 years old that was up in grandma's attic with that from her grandma or her grandpa or what have you. So, but we'll take that tour at a later date.
Well, but yeah, but it's very cool to hear more about your profession. Although I've heard a lot of these stories before, but
You
I
have,
thought other people could hear them. But yeah, so we do have our plug for Heart Spitting, which is available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. So
ooh,
and I have links for that down in the description. And yeah, we appreciate all of our readers out there.
can I do the YouTube thing?
Yeah, do the
Smash that like button. Oh, look at the
I
cringe.
hate
Look at the cringe.
it. Forget to subscribe, you know,
Click
subscribe.
subscribe. What's the other thing? What's the other thing? Ring the bell or
Ring
something?
that bell. Yeah, I know,
Ring
but
that bell.
there's not going to be a bell at some point. They're going to take out the bell, or I don't know, whatever. But yeah, but we can't wait to show you what other stories will bloom
Yeah.
here in Story Garden. So yay.
Yay.